Now, if we transition to the payload discussion, that bit I had two rounds of questions. There was an initial question that JoeBen answered, and then there was a follow-up that came back, and we learned a little bit more details. I think the summary for me was that they didn't specifically say they're ready to go with four people sitting in the plane with a certain maximum weight of 1,000 pounds, which was what they have listed on all of their product information. And it seemed to me that JoeBen was being coy about how they're going to solve some of the problems that they're having with getting the maximum power out of the batteries or the design, and there was a pathway that was sort of laid out where he talked about an evolution, and then the specifics around whether the battery, the software, or other. And JoeBen had also said there's other technical things or something to that extent. What was your take on that? Am I summarizing that a little too clumsily?
Yeah, no, I think it's one of those things that until there's an explicit number that's maybe said out loud, even though it's been publicized via some of the materials from Joby, from the estimates that they'll have for payload. But yeah, I think you hit it on the head. I think for me, the biggest thing is, to kind of break apart that conversation. And if there's any other questions that people want to put into the chat, we can hopefully touch on too. But for me, the question to JoeBen was very direct and very explicit. And whenever JoeBen has ever answered in any of his interviews, I've said this before, but you can see the wheels turning where he has knowledge about things for his company, the technology that he's working on. Again, this all started with investments from the Defense Innovation Unit from the government. He has to be very explicit. Now, to just say what the payload is, people say, well, why can't you say that? Why not? I think it's also something that, yes, Joby could be working towards getting to a certain weight. They have, for the most part, they have put out numbers for the 1,000-pound payload, which is, of course, including passengers and baggage, which sometimes gets lost in the shuffle. But they've always just said it was a pilot and 4 passengers. That was, the goal for the vehicle. Now, they've also said that it could fly up to 200 miles an hour, and we've seen that. That's not a question mark. We've literally seen that happen on radar multiple times. So they've also talked about the decibels that the aircraft produces, 45 dBA flying overhead, 60 to 65 during takeoff, at some reasonable distance away. And those have also been vetted. So for me, I'm less concerned about this, and actually it kind of makes my gears turn of what would happen if it was actually more than what people expect, or maybe it's neutral or thought of in a different way. As we were talking about offline, we know that Joby several years ago already flew the S4 and the full, the complete electric variant over 150 miles, and that was in up near the Bay Area. And then so since then, I've tracked that on radar, a couple of years ago, where they were doing multiple flights that were over an hour, and at the average speed that they're flying, 100 plus knots, that would get you to somewhere between 100, 150 miles of range. Plus, that's still going to be safely done. So there's still reserves on board. That maybe Joby has something up their sleeve where they can actually maybe not increase the payload, but it increases the range. And that's where I kind of kick it to you and see maybe if we can instigate any questions. But
there was the question about just regarding the payload and how far off are they? Is there an issue with the batteries? Is it the battery related topic? Is it how big is it a deal to recertify new battery design if it's batteries?
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would just say for that, I think what's important is that people look at what's already been put out there. There's a lot of people new to the space, a lot of people who are maybe have been in the space for a while, but there's maybe fatigue of how long this has taken, or et cetera, even though this was always, roughly the time frame outside of, there's been a couple things that are outside of Joby or anybody in the space's control. But go back to the Joby interview with Sandy Munro, where John Wagner literally handles and explains in detail how the Joby batteries are both built and put together, what they've been developed to. These aren't, novel batteries per se, maybe how they're put into the vehicle, since there is no such thing as an eVTOL, successfully outside of what Joby and some others are trying to do. But these batteries are from the automotive side. So these are not, Joby has tested unique chemistries and things like that they've hinted towards a few times in the past. But what they're using now are, automotive grade batteries that have already been tested. They've been testing these with the FAA for quite some time. In the video, which Sandy Munro, John Wagner talks about how these are put into laser welded battery modules that then make up the battery packs, and that these are already tested so that thermal runaway could not happen if there was some type of failure, et cetera. So, we can talk about it and give our perspective, but I'm going to leave it to John Wagner, who came up with the Model S battery train for the Tesla and has been working at Joby for quite some time, for the expertise on this. But, I hope that people don't get lost in, maybe some things that people try and instigate on Reddit, or just aren't fully knowledgeable about, and really just listen to the experts at this, because, Joby isn't just a fly-by-night project. This is, serious engineers, world-class tip of the spear that are coming up with these technologies. And sometimes they're not going to be able to tell us everything publicly. That would be very silly of them. As an investor, I would not want them to say, hey, we've got a battery chemistry that's going to actually allow us to fly 200 miles, or maybe something else, right? It could go either way, but that's my 2 cents on, people having questions. These batteries are not, something that's not been certified, or that Joby's trying to do by themselves. There's a lot of background that's happened with this, and they've already talked about in the future, as more powerful battery dense battery options get built for them, or available for them, that they'll be able to swap them in and out, because they use modules into their packs and they do everything in house. So anyway, I will I'll stop there, and you keep me honest on things.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think a big shout out to the Reddit, retail Joby tracker community for putting this battery topic and weight topic on the agenda. If you followed the story from the early days, there were questions about how's Joby going to do it, what kind of performance are they going to get. And so it was kind of, on one hand, it was nice to see the maturing of the discussion around the company to all of these things, right? And there's a ton of things, like, whether the certification process is moving fast, whether Joby can build the planes, whether anyone can build the planes. And so this is just the next sort of conversation. And I think what I heard from JoeBen was, we're very pleased with the performance. Now, that came after he said it might take us a bit of time. And I'm just paraphrasing here. This is an investment advice, or don't make any decisions based on what I'm saying here. But it said something effective, it may take us a bit of time to evolve into that. And then later, the specifics were something to the effect of, where was it? In terms of payload of the aircraft, that's something we expect. It may take us a bit of time to evolve into that. We're very pleased with the performance. And then they're both elements that are there, as well as other upgrades we expect to happen over time. And I think the other element, both elements was from a question around, is it a software evolution or a battery evolution? And so JoeBen acknowledged both of those, plus added other upgrades. So this is a company that has a top level staff of engineering. They've tackled all of the problems that have been ahead of them up until this point. And I think, I'm not an expert on batteries or physics of aerospace flying, but some of the things I wonder whether you can just trade. So you can trade maybe initial 100-mile range for, say, 50 miles, which would give you plenty of range for all of the air taxi and all of the demonstrations that you're talking about, and just add more weight and use the power of the battery and trade-off range. They mentioned block upgrades or other things that they can do from software. They're not standing still, right? They're going to continue to use this time to refine. And again, we're talking about they haven't started their FAA flight yet, so there's room to develop. And they have 2,000 people at Joby working on this problem or these issues or trading off, performance in different ways. And so I'm confident that they're ready to go. When you look at when you stack up all the partnership announcements, the capital raises and things like that, I think people with more insights into what's happening exactly day to day, seem to be confident to keep going forward. So how it all comes to market, whether the first very official Dubai flight at the end of this year has 2 passengers instead of 4 and doesn't travel 100 miles, per what Joby has guided to, that's fine with me. I mean, I'm looking really long term like this. The ramp of these planes is going to take time to get to 50, to get to 100. The vertiport development, all of these things are ahead of us. And so it would be naive to think that there still aren't other fit and finish things that need to get done. And to your point, the competitive landscape, I can see why Joby would want to hold some of these cards close to the vest, whether that means they have other things that are coming that'll improve the performance or just meet the performance expectations that were set. But when I step back, really big picture, the first year, you're not going to need to have a plane that can carry 4 people 100 miles. You're just not. You're not going to have any routes. You're not going to have any missions that are flying at that point. And so, evolving the platform and solving some of these performance challenges, I think I'll be watching carefully. But they seem to still be thinking that they're very happy with the performance, and they're going forward. They're ramping production. I mean, that to me is a huge signal of how confident they are.